If you have played with Shaolin on his default skin, you must have also noticed the tattoos on his right arm and on the side of his face. I have wondered for a while now if these characters mean anything or if it's just random gibberish. So I thought, why not look into it? And that's what I did. And this is what I found out. Chinese characters, also known as Hanzi, are an ancient writing form from China. It is unknown how old exactly they are, but they can be dated back to at least the Shang dynasty, which was from the year 1600 to 1046 BC. Chinese characters are logograms, meaning that each character has its own meaning. This is of course because these characters used to be actual drawings, but with time they have developed into something that are more simple to write. The fact that Chinese characters derived from drawings can actually be seen in many of the current Chinese characters. For example, Ren, Qiu, San, Kao, Mu, and of course many more. You can find some examples of these types of characters in the game even. In most of the samurai maps there are some temples which has a sign in front of it. I know this is a Japanese sign, but it is similar enough to Chinese so that we can use it in this example. If this was in Chinese it would say Tianshang, Tiansha. The literal translation is heaven above, heaven below. Of course it means in heaven and on earth. But the above and below sign, it looks like arrows pointing up and pointing down. Today's Chinese characters are composed of radicals, and radicals are smaller signs which all have their own meaning and together they form a bigger sign. Studying the meaning of radicals can be very interesting because many of today's characters they tell a story or they have some sort of cultural meaning. Chinese characters are typically read from left to right, but in some cases, which is typical for older writings, and in this example here as well, it is written from right to left. If there are no punctuations, there are also no indicators of which direction it is supposed to be read. You simply try from one direction and see if it makes sense, and if it doesn't, you try from another direction. Besides being read from left to right and right to left, it can also be written from up to down. There are very few cases where it can be written from down to up, but so far I have only seen that on the roads. There are different reports about how many Chinese characters there actually are, but most reports claim about 50 to 80,000. Of course, you don't need to learn all of them to become fluent in Chinese. It is said that you need to know about 2 to 3,000. It may seem like a difficult task to learn Chinese characters, but it can be pretty useful. Chinese characters are not only used in China. Japan has their own version, which are known as kanji. Even Korea used to use these characters and still do at a very limited extent. They are called Hanja. And any other country or region with people of Chinese descent are likely to also use these characters. So learning these characters can be quite useful if you want to understand people from these cultures. And now let's finally return to our Shaolin Warrior and his tattoos. The challenge will be to find out where these tattoos begin and where they end. A good place to start would be somewhere where it's not distorted, so let's look at his face. There is one more fact about Chinese characters that I have not yet mentioned, and that is that there are two kinds of Chinese characters. One type is the traditional one and the other is simplified. The simplified Chinese characters were developed by the Chinese Communist Party as an effort to promote literacy. Many of the traditional characters were changed to more simple versions in the 1950s and 1960s. It therefore seems a bit strange to me that this Shaolin Warrior is tattooed with simplified Chinese characters. Of course, it's just a very small detail, but it's still bothering me a little more than it should. But simplified or not, let's look into what it actually says. And on the right side you can see that it reads 世间虚妄, and that means the world is fabricated. And right underneath it says 百无禁忌, and that means everything is permitted. So together they make up nothing is true, everything is permitted, from Assassin's Creed. And between those characters we have some other ones saying 威震三州, which seems to be the name of a temple in Hangzhou. But the literal translation is power to shake 3 continents. There are 3 continents in the game. Maybe this is a reference. Right next to it says something about 一戒为师. This quote comes from a story about when Buddha was about to die. His brother monk asked him, "When you die, who will become my new teacher?" And Buddha replied, 一戒为师. The disciple becomes the master. And the Buddhist theme continues if we move to the other side of his face. Here it says 戒定慧. I would translate those to restraint, determination, and intelligence. And these values are known as the teaching of 3. They are 3 values that the Buddhist teaching wants us to practice. Now moving on to the arm, there's a place where you can just see 北前拳头, and that literally means Fist of the North Star. But on closer inspection I found out that the 3rd character is not a Quan, it's a Ju. So unfortunately it just means North Star, reach head. And that doesn't make sense, but I found out that this is part of a poem by the 12th century philosopher Liu Zhouyuan, and it's about looking up at the North Star and raising one's head. And right next to, you can see the characters 无圣法人, and that translates to something along the line of becoming unborn. I found different answers to what that exactly means, but some suggest that it means recognizing that nothing arises or perishes. And finally, on his chest I found some of the last characters I could make sense of. His necklace, of course, I have covered that before. It says 火, which means fire. Behind the necklace there are some characters that are covered up and difficult to read, but I did find out what they're supposed to mean. The leftmost characters read 诸恶莫作, 诸善奉行, and that translates to do no evil, pursue all good. And I think that's everything I could extract from his tattoos. I hope you enjoyed this free lesson in Chinese Hanzi and small Easter egg hunting. Have a great day and see you around.